Hey guys, welcome back. So in the past videos, we have been able to sign up a user and we can log them in. So in this video, I'm going to be showing you how you can restrict access to people who have emails that are verified. So you will notice that most of the websites these days, or most of the apps, they will require users to first verify their emails before they can really access services on the site. So that's what we're going to be doing now. So every time a user enters here their credentials and they submit, we want to send them an account verification email for which they can click from their email and we'll bring them back to our application and activate their account. And yeah, so it's gonna be fun. Let's go ahead and build it. Okay, so we start off where we have the user model. So our user model actually inherits from abstract user. So abstract user is the base model that Django authentication uses. So by default, they don't have the is verified or a way to know if the user's email is verified. So now, since in our custom model, we are inheriting from it, we can add to it. So we're going to add another attribute here called is email verified. Okay, so it's going to be a Boolean field. By default, it's going to be false. So now that we have made a change here, we need to basically migrate these changes so our database knows about them. So we want to do manage.py make migrations. Okay, so that's gonna add the is verified. Then now we want to migrate to make sure everything is synced properly. Okay, so now that we have these changes, we want to change a few things about the way we are basically logging in a user. So you will note that if we go to our authentication and then registration, so we'll go to the views, then the registration view, you see that every time they create an account, we basically create it and then we tell them to log in, and that's okay. But now on the login, we want to go to where we authenticate the user. So here after authenticate, we want to check if their email is verified. So we can do if user.is email verified. So if it's verified, then we want to log them in. But if it's not, so here we want to check if not. So if it's not verified, then we want to tell them, hey, you didn't verify your email, please verify again. So what we want to do is I'm going to go over here. So over here, we can send them and we can return a message, something like email is not verified, email inbox. Ensure to check the spam too, if you will. So every time this email is not verified, it may not be verified for some reasons. One of those might be because a user maybe didn't click the link, or they clicked the link at a point when it was expired. So we need to provide a way for them to request that email. So at this point in time, we have the user. So in here, we have the users. If the user authenticates properly, we have their email here. So what you would do in that case is you would send them to a template where you can have a button, let's say a button to resend email, and then when they click it, then you resend the email. But for now, let's just focus on basically sending them the first email and also activating them. So here, you see when they are not activated, we are not going to be logging them in. So now we need a way to send them the activation email. Now to send an activation email, we're going to go here in the registration. So that's going to be here. So before we redirect them, we want to send them an email. So here I'm going to put a function called send activation email, and we need to create it. So I'm going to go up here. So I'm going to pass it the user, right, and also the request, because we're going to need this. So let's go up here and create this function. So on here, I'm going to have a def send activation email. Now it's going to take in the user like we saw, then the request. So here, what we want to do is we want to basically have a few things. One of those few things, we are going to need to have an email subject, and also we're going to have like the message you want to tell a user like, hey, please use this link to activate your account. So also we need a way to have them redirect to the same website that we sent the email from and go to the login or go to our activation route. So over here, we need to first have a way of knowing which domain we are running on. So I'm going to have a variable called current site. So to get the current site that our application is being served on, we need to use a utility from Django sites. So from Django, contrib.sites.shortcuts, I believe, yeah, import get current site. Okay, so here we need to do get current site. So get current site takes in the request. So we have the request there. So that's going to give us something like localhost, or if we're on some domain, it gives us some domain.com or whatever the domain would be. Okay, so now that we have the site, we need to construct a subject. So here we can have email subject. So this can be something like, hey, like activate your account. So now we need to construct the email we are going to send them, so the email body. So here what I want to do is I want to set up email body. So for the body, we are going to be using a utility called render to string. Now basically what render to string does is it takes a template, like an HTML template, and then it can pass dynamic values to it. So let's import render to string here. So yeah, import render to string. Okay, so we'll be creating that template in a few, but moving on over here, we want to say render to string. So we need to create that template. So over here, I'm going to have an authentication. Then I'm going to call it activate.html. So we need to send some things to it. So over here, we're going to have a context. So for that context, in that template, we're going to need to have access to like the user. So we can like say the username like hello Alex or whoever it will be. So now we have the user there. So also we need to have the domain, because we want to construct a link that they can use. So we can pass current site there. All right, so then the other thing will be, so guys, if you think about it, we are going to be sending emails from one server to the other. We will also be using an SMTP server. So all those things, so for us to be able to transfer that information across different servers, we need a way to ensure compatibility between those systems that we'll be interacting with. And also we need to make sure that our information is secure. So here we will have a UID. So the UID will be basically the user's ID, but we are going to need to encrypt it and also have it in a format that can be understood by other systems. So over here, we're going to also have some utilities. So we're gonna go here from Django HTTP and import some things. Okay, so once we have these, we're also going to need to have to encode the user's token. So whenever we send them a link, it's gonna have that token. So we need a way to encode those. So we're gonna import some utilities also from Django. So we're gonna say from Django.utils .encoding import. We're gonna import force bytes, force str, and also force text. Okay, so this is gonna make sure that whenever we are sending out data from our application, we basically encode it into byte format, and whenever we are getting it back, we can now use force str or force text to read it back into native Python objects. So also I'm going to have to import this code here, this error code here, so we can be able to use this. Okay, so moving on. So here where we need to pass the UID, like I said, we don't need to send our exact ID of the user, something like ID 1 or ID 2. We need to encode it in base64 format, so people don't like start to guess it in the URL or something. So here what you can do is we need to do URL safe base64 encode like this. Then what we want to do there is we want to say force bytes. So force bytes will be transferring the ID. So you know our ID is an integer. So what this will do is it's gonna convert it into byte format. So let's pass user.pk. So that way it can be safely transferred over different systems. Okay, so here let's put a comma. We also need the token. So the token will be that token string we sent to the user that we'll use to identify if it was generated from our server or if it is still valid or it expired, those kinds of things. So to get the token, so Django has a specific utility to reset passwords, but they don't have utilities to verify users' emails, or they don't have a way for us to be able to generate tokens that we can use like one time. So what I'm going to do over here, I'm going to create a tools file. And we are going to be building on that password generator class that Django uses and to like manage passwords. So we're going to be using it here to create a utility that we can use to make a token that can be used one time. So what we want to do here is we want to import that class. So it's from Django utils. So we're going to do, it's actually Django contrib auth tokens import password generator. Okay, so here we're going to create our own class. So we're going to call it password generator. Then we're going to inherit from password generator, so to get everything that password generator has. And then we are going to be overriding a function called make hash value. So here we're going to say make hash value. So you see that it takes in the user and then the timestamp. Now the way this make hash value works is basically it gives a way for us to create that token and have a way of verifying if that token had changed depending on the return of this hash value. So to be able to create a hash, we're going to need to use some utilities to make sure that the hash we create is basically compatible. So now we're going to need to create this hash. So this make hash value, we need it to return a value that whenever compared again, will tell that it had changed. So how do we tell that it had changed? So the cases for those will be if a user, let's say, has already activated, we can return here a value that every time the user activates, it changes. So over here, we're going to return a string. So the string is going to be, we're going to be using these utilities. So we're going to say str, then we're going to turn the user dot pk. Then I'm going to be adding str again here. Here we can pass the timestamp also. And most importantly here, we are going to be concatenating their user dot is email verified. I believe that's how we called it. Now, every time this hash changes, then that means that whenever we are now comparing again the hashes for this user, this will have changed and we can know that, oh, this was used before and hey, you shouldn't be using it again. You'll notice that now we are using str to basically turn these into strings, but this is a boolean. So the best way to actually make this a hash string value is to use a utility called 6. So I'm going to pause the server here and install 6. Actually, maybe maximize this and install 6. So I'm going to do pip install 6. Okay, so here we can do import 6. Now here, instead of us doing str, then let me do this. Then we're going to be doing 6. Then we're going to do text type, and then it's going to be that. So similarly, this is going to be 6 text type, the timestamp. Then this is also going to be 6. Then text type, then there is email verified. So now we need to return this. Now we're going to do this return like this. Let me actually maximize this. So over here, we need to import that utility. So I'm going to say from utils import password. Actually, it's called token generator. You see how we called it? So I should be token generator, not password generator. So token generator. Okay, so over here, I'm going to create a function. It's going to be called generate token. So this is going to be equal to password token generator. Okay, like this. So now we can use generate token to generate the token basically. So you can say from utils generate token. So now if we go back to what we are doing here, we can now say generate token. Then whenever we call generate token dot make token, so make token takes in the user we want to make the token for. So you can pass the user there. So now we need to create this activate template. So I'm going to go to our templates. So that's going to be here, authentication. Let's create activate.html. So first I'm going to load this tag called auto escape. So escape, then we'll turn it off. So we don't want Django to escape any characters we'll put in here. We need to end it also. Alright, so in here now we can construct our message. So we want to say hi, then the username. So the username, since we are passing the user to this template, so that's going to be here. We can just do user.username and do user.username. Then we tell them, please use the link below to verify your account. Okay, so now let's create the link. So the link, we're going to start off with SMTP because we didn't get the protocol from the view, but you can also get the protocol and also pass it here. But for most of the sites, if they have HTTPS, then it's going to be redirecting all HTTPs to HTTPS, so it's still going to be fine. Okay, so here we need to pass the domain since you're already passing it. So we can say domain. Then here, so remember, whenever they click on the link, we need to take them to a view where we can verify from. So I'm going to put here the view. It's going to be something like our domain /auth/activate, and then the URL is going to have two things. It's going to have the encoded user ID and also the token we generate for them. So here we can have our regular syntax, then we're going to have URL. So the URL, we are going to create that view and we're going to give it a name called activate. So also it's going to be taking in two parameters. So in the view, you'll notice that we are passing UID and then the token. So here I can get a UID here like this. So that's going to be equal to the ID. So since it's encoded, I'm going to say B64 here because that's what it is. So also here we can pass the token. So the token is going to be the token we generate. Okay, so now this looks good. So let's go ahead and create the view. So we're going to go to the views.py, and the view is going to be simple. So down here we can have def activate user. So it's going to take in request, and then we know it's going to take in two other things. So it's going to take in the encoded user ID. So it's going to be UID B64. Then it's going to take in our token. Okay, so here what we want to do is we want to be getting the user ID, okay, from the encoded one. So I'm going to have a try except block here. So I'm going to be accepting exception as E. So the reason why we're doing try except is while trying to decode this token, we might get some errors. So we don't want our application to crash when that happens. So we're going to create an ID. So the ID, we're going to try to now get it from the encoded one. So remember how we did force bytes when we were turning the ID into bytes? So here you can say force text. So force text, we are going to be passing a decoded version of our ID. So we pass this, then we pass UID B64. So this should now return for us our user ID like 1 or 2, 3. Okay, so now the next thing we will do is try to get the user. So we're gonna say user equals user. So that's the user model objects get. So get, it's gonna be pk equals this ID. So here what you can do, so here if we have an error, then of course something would have gone wrong. So we'll set the user here to null, to none. So down here I'm going to make a simple check. So we're going to check if we have the user, and also I'm going to check if the token was not used before. So to check if the token was not used before, we do, I think we called it generate token, and then we call check token on it. So check token takes in the user, so we pass user there, then the token we want to check. So we already have the token. So if this is true, so that means this is valid. So we want to go ahead and now activate the user. So now to activate the user, we do user dot is email verified, then we set it to true, and then we need to save the user. So we say user dot save. Okay, so now we can tell them your account was activated. You can go ahead and log in. So let's do messages dot add message. It's gonna be successful. Then we say email verified. You can log in. Then we can now return them to the login. So we can say return redirect. So we can say reverse for login. Okay, so otherwise if something goes wrong, then we want to maybe tell them to request the verification email. So over here I'm going to just return, so let's return render. So we're going to be rendering just a template that says something went wrong, request a new one. So the template, let's have it in auth. So it's going to be authentication, then we say activate failed .html. Okay, so when it fails, we need to pass the user if the user is there. So we can have a context here. So to pass the user, you can do user, then we pass the user. So we can check if that user is there in the template and maybe tell them to request a new one. So we need to add this to our urls.py. So we're gonna go over here and also create this. So path. So here it's gonna be activate user. And by the way, the user will not see it. So for us, when they come to the site, we will check them and then redirect them. So it's gonna be views.activate user. So the name, remember in our template, we said it should be called activate over here. So that's why we have this here. It's gonna be activate user fine. Okay, so now stuff are looking good, but you might be asking yourself, okay, how are we going to send the email? How is it gonna go? So for us to send the email over here, we're going to be using a class called email message. So I'm going to import it from Django core mail. So from Django.core.mail, import email message. So now over here, once we've created our email, what we want to do is now say email message. So we want to give it things like the subject. So you can say subject equals the subject, email subject. Then we need to pass it the message. So we can say, so the message is going to be the body here. So we can say body equals the email body. Then the next thing that we want to pass is, if you look here, we need to pass a from email. So a from email is the email they tell a user that this may be something like accounts@ouраpp.com. So someone who is sending that email. So we're gonna have a setting. So we're gonna have a setting in our settings.py that's gonna be the from email. So what you can do over here is let's import settings here so we can access what's in the settings. So from Django conf import settings. So now here we'll be creating it. So we can say settings dot from email from from user. So this is gonna be, of course, be from email. It's gonna be like that. Save it. Then we need to now specify the email of the user that we want to send the mail to. So for specify the email, it has to be a list. So we're gonna use this syntax here and pass the user email. So the user email is gonna be in user.email like this. So let's make sure that here we pass the 2 key. So now that we have this, we need to send it. So here I'm gonna create a variable to hold this. So down here we say email.send. Okay, and save. So now if we run back our server, you already know that we have not set up how to send the email from the user. So Django makes this one really easy. We just need to tell it about a few things. Now, the things that it requires us to tell it about is we're gonna go to our settings.py, and first off, remember we need to set up the email from user. So we're gonna go to settings.py. So that's here, settings.py. Okay, email config. So email from user. So for the email from user, this can be anything, but I'm going to be using Gmail to send out emails. So Gmail provides us an SMTP service where you can like log into an email and then perform things like sending an email when you're not using the Gmail applications, but rather through the SMTP. So I'm going to bring in these other email settings that Django needs. So one of them is going to be the email host, the email host user, the email host password, and whether we should do TLS or not, and then the port for the email. So over here, what we want is here, over here, you'll notice that I'm putting these values from the environment. So for now, I'm not going to be putting them from the environment, but I want to say that whenever you are doing this, make sure you're putting them from the environment. Now we already have a .m file, so you can maybe come over here and export them. So you can say export, let's say from email user. Say something like startupacademy@gmail.com. So with the .env, you actually don't need to specify this. It's gonna be passed to a string. So now over here we can come and say, okay, our host user is gonna be os environ get from user. Okay, so the host, we are going to be using the Gmail SMTP service. So the host now is I'm gonna be hard coding it here, but feel free to move them to the environment before you push to GitHub. That's what I'm gonna do too. So here you do SMTP gmail.com. Then the host user is gonna be my user. So whenever you have a Gmail account, that is what you want to use here. So I'm going to be using the same account you saw me set up, and then for the password, this will be the password of your Gmail account, your current password of your Gmail account. So you can use this only when you don't have two-factor authentication set up on your Google account. So if you have, then you can look into how to use app passwords, or you can create another sample Google account just to handle the testing here. So here what I want to do now is, so the use TLS will be true, and then the port is 587. So this is the setting you're always gonna have if you're going to be using Gmail. So I need to set up my password. So over here in my .env, I'm going to now export the password. So the password is gonna be anything. So I'm not gonna be showing you guys what that is. but it can be anything. Feel free to enter your password over there. And now when we make changes to our environment, we need to update our application by sourcing in the environment again and then restarting the application. So now here everything is set up correctly. I'm just gonna pause and make changes to the environment to make sure that my password is correct and it doesn't fail to work. Okay, so I've gone ahead to change my .env to use a real password, and now we can go ahead to test out the app. So the app is still up and running, so we're gonna open this. So this is gonna open up. We're gonna go to create account. Now I'm gonna sign up a user that we had not signed up. So when we click submit, oh, this email is taken. Let's use this one. So when you click submit, you see that now we are getting some issues. So you notice that up front we are getting reverse for this is not found. And you see that the arguments we are passing in is UID B64 and then the token. So that means that in the urls.py, that's gonna be here. We need to be passing these. So over here, we need to make sure we are expecting them. So we are expecting this, and also the token. So make sure you have those. Okay, so this should also be a placeholder. So we're gonna do token there, and yeah. So now if it restarts and we come back over here, let's go try sign up another user. So let me use the other Startup Academy email, password, submit. Oh, email is taken. So it looks like all my accounts are taken. So I'm gonna pause the server and first delete all these users. So we're gonna open up the Django shell. So Django gives us a way to really interact with the database or application in the terminal. So we do that through the shell. So now I want to delete all the existing users. Now we can delete those by using the model. So I'm gonna import the model. So from authentication, .models, import user. So here you can say user objects should be .all, user objects all. Then we want to delete all of them. So you can say delete. Okay, so that's gonna go ahead and delete for. So also it deletes the to-dos that those users had because we have a cascade on delete. So now to exit, you can hit Ctrl-D, and then let's run back our server. Okay, so here if we try it again, enter a password, click submit, and let's wait for it. Okay, so when it's done, you see that we get account created. You can now log in. That's because we need to change a message when we send an email. But what I want to show you is I want to open up my Gmail account here, and when it opens up, you see that now we have this email here. So you see that we now have this email here in my inbox. So this email is telling us, hi, this is the username I just added, and then it's telling us we can use this link to activate. So when I click on this link, notice that we are brought here. We are told that our email is activated, and now we can log in. That means that everything is working. But now when I click it again, you see that now things fail. So they are failing because it is looking out for activate failed, and this means that our link can only be used once since we are trying to use it twice. So on that view or on that template, which let's create it so our application doesn't break like it's doing. So on this template, we can say maybe something like, let's put a paragraph here and say something went wrong with your link. Okay, so if you have any cases here, you can maybe tell them to request a new one, or you can do anything you want here. Okay, so if we refresh, you see that now this is the template that will show, but the account gets activated at first. Okay, so to test it out, first off, you notice that when we finish, we didn't get the message that they sent us an email. So we want to go to our views. So on the sign up, after we send an email, actually this should be not action but activation. Let me change it. Activation. So whenever we send an email, we won't tell them we sent you an email to verify your account. We want to actually test it out properly. So I'm going to open up the shell and import user. So from authentication, models, import user. So here we say user objects all, delete like this. Okay. So now stop the server. Let's run it again. So now if we come here, let's go to the register, and I'm going to enter a user. So here can be password. So I can do the same user. It's going to be this. Now sign up, and you see we get this. We sent you an email. So if we come here, if we came here in the shell and try to verify if the user's email is verified, so we're gonna go to Python manage the PY shell. Let's import the user again. So from authentication models, import user. So we say user objects. Right now we know we only have one user. So if we said all, it's gonna return. It should be user objects, not objects. So objects. So you see this is one now. So we can check is email verified. I believe since the user so this returns an array with query sets. So let's pick the first and run that. So you see that now it is false. But now let's check our inbox. So I'm gonna do this and return back the server. So if we come to our email again, you see that now we have this new email, and when I click it, you see that now it's verified. So to verify that it did actually verify, we're gonna do shell again. Let's import our authentication model again. So from authentication models, import user. So now to check the user, we can say user objects, or by the way, here you can do first. Since we have your one user and we know it, we can do first. Then you see that is the user. Now we can check is email verified, and you can see that now it is verified, meaning that now this way a user can continue to use the application. They can log in. So one thing that I want to show you guys is one thing that I've noticed is whenever we send an email here, so let's try something fresh here. Let me just put a dummy because this one I'm not following it. So whenever we put an email here and try to submit it, you see that it takes a while to return to the user. So the user doesn't know what's going on. It is actually loading for a long time. That's because it is sending out an email. Now, we really don't want to make a user wait that long, because what are we really doing? Sending an email is something we can do in the background and tell a user that, hey, we sent you an email, and then they can wait for it. Okay, so to speed it up a bit, I'm going to have to come over here and create a thread. So with Python, we can use threads. So threads allow us to run different processes in one program. So that means that our application now can focus on like interacting with the user, while some threads handle things like sending an email. So here I'm going to set up a class. I'm going to call it email thread. So this will inherit from threading.thread. Okay, so over here we need to have a constructor. So in the constructor, it's going to be under init. So the constructor is going to be taking in self, of course. Then we'll be passing basically the message we want to send. So here I can pass email. So down here we can initialize this email to the one that the user passes. Then we want to do threading, thread, init, self. Okay, so to send the mail, we need to implement a function called run. So run takes in self, of course. And now here we can run a task. So we want to send out this email. So we can say self.this email. Then we want to run send on it. So it should be just send. Now we need to create an instance of this class and pass the email we want it to send basically. So we should be importing threading. I was hoping we are. So import threading here. So instead of us sending it here, we can offload it to the other thread up there. So here we need to initialize it. So we can say email thread. Then you see it has to be instantiated using the email we want to send. So we want to pass it, and then we want to call start on it. So with threads, when we call start, it's gonna come and run what's in the run. So remember, email now is an instance of the email message, and it has the send property on it. So it's gonna now come here and call send. Okay, so now if we come back to our application, so I'm going to come back here. So now I'm going to be using a real email to make sure it is still working. So here, let me use this. So for the email, I'm going to use this very same email. So if we click submit, you see that now it is instant. And now if I go to my account, so I'm going to go to my account, you see that, yeah, our email has arrived. And yeah, so if we click it, our account gets activated. So here we can continue, we can go ahead and log in. Okay, so that's gonna do it for the video. So if you guys ever get issues sending that email, make sure you have insecure apps allowed in your Google account. So to do that, you want to go to your Google account. So here I'm gonna go to manage my account, and then you want to go to security. On security, you want to look for less secure apps. So on less secure apps, you want to turn this on. So if we turn this off, things will fail. But make sure you turn it on and your account doesn't use two-factor authentication. If it does, please look into how to use app passwords to send out the email. So yeah, so I hope you found this tutorial helpful. If you did, give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll talk to you soon.